Hello, everybody. I hope you've all had a wonderful day. Once again, it has been way too nice here in Utah. I think it got pretty close to 50. Nothing like when it was 59, 60 the other day, but all too warm. And so, before we jump into Plan Your Wild, I just wanted to show you guys the before and after of where we are with the wood chip piles. My neighbor did the lion's share of this. He got the highest pile. It's kind of hard to see the distinction, but there's a lower pile and a higher point in this gargantuan mess of wood chips. And so we've gotten it all spread out. It's not higher than 3 feet now, right? Oh, goodness. Free wood chips are wonderful and also very, very overwhelming, I promise you. So let's go ahead and jump into our garden planner here to check out where we're at in December. Now, December has not been finalized, right? So for where we are, we have all of January finalized and all of February is also finalized, but only released up to the second lesson, because in the second lesson, you're going to see some templates that I put together for you guys to be able to use and put around like on a grid if you wanted to play with it. You have your grids, right? Several of them, just kind of fun, cute. And these are all of the rewilding styles of templates, right? You just kind of cut them out and you can move them around. You could definitely modify them. Of course, this gives you an idea. So if there's a different shape that you would want to try, any of that was more than anything to give you an idea, right? And so my husband hates curves, so I probably won't get many curves, but this is probably a little bit exaggerated unless you're doing like in ground, and then you'd be talking about edging and stuff. So it's a little bit more, but it's to kind of show that it doesn't have to be perfect, right? With the rewilded areas, it's up to you. You can go more formalized with your edging, or you can get a little bit fun with it. And then you have your in-ground templates, different sizes of containers, and traditional templates, all that you could just kind of cut out and move around on your grid. If you have a bigger property that you're playing with, you can always put a couple pieces of the grid papers together. And so it's something to have in the physical moment because it can be really hard to picture. And so these just give you some ways to play with it on paper and really get an idea of the different types of things that you might do in your space. And so this is embedded here in the community, and you also have the link so that you can jump in and copy it out of the garden planners templates, right? They haven't gotten combined. They're on two different documents. I'd have to completely redo the actual physical planner based on what we've done here in the community in these spaces. As we've talked that through the last month or two, it really changed how everything is laid out. And so I'm going to start a little bit from scratch and mostly just copy what we have into a doc because it's been completely modified from where I started by all the different discussions that we've had here in class. And this would fit better here. Oh, this is too much, right? All these different things that we've talked about. So it'll be completely modified, but I did release it so that you guys could get all the way up there and start playing with it. And so that's where we're at with the gardening planner. And now that we've gotten it all the way through to February, we're still only halfway through December, so we still have 2 more classes. I will try to get December's month broken up here in the next day or so, probably Wednesday or Thursday more realistically, but I'll get that broken up into weeks. All the weeks are here. I just have to get into each lesson and separate it out into segments and then post it in each of those. And then I take what this huge lesson was and I just put an overview in the beginning month. And then the last thing I was just like, oh, okay, so we're going to have weekly checklists for each of these weeks that show the overview, just the main items of what we talked about in the lesson so that you just have a nice little checklist. And so this last space here, when it's a traditional month, there are a couple that have 5 weeks, right? But on most of them, you'll see this last lesson here, and that will be checklists for the whole month. So what do you guys think about that? Does that feel like something that would be useful? Does it feel like it's overdone? Any thoughts or suggestions on any part of it?
Yeah, I like what you said.
Yeah. Does a checklist and like a lesson that's more fleshed out around that feel like that would be a useful thing for you each week?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's calming.
That's how I feel about it too. I really do. Lists help me. I may not always accomplish everything on my list, but I can really identify what I want to get done or what has to get done. Right.
Right. I agree. I'm the same way.
And then for those who aren't quite that well organized, perhaps it will give them a little bit more timing structure, right? You don't always have to be this hugely structured person. So you didn't have to create the list. You can just look at it every week, right? Does that help those of us who are a little less organized? I won't name any names.
Well, is December gonna be like a planning month, like a year
So
of planning?
that's what we've been talking about a lot during these meetings is what is going on with things like the microgreens and stuff. And that's where we'd all talked in here in one of these lessons about the fact that we might move some of November into December because it's even better to talk about microgreens and sprouts in that area. But they're already, it's already here like that, right? For the most part. I think that December is completely done. And so what is here is the composting. And I'm still not sure I like that placement. And so that's one of the things I really want to work on with you guys. Sometimes you just on your own have a really hard time deciding where one thing might fit. Like where would it be useful to the majority of you guys when we're working through this, the composting information, right? December, it can be frozen. So you can't do a whole lot with it. If it's not frozen, it's not a bad time to deal with it because it's something that won't stink as bad, right? If there's any stench to it. And there really shouldn't be if you're mixing your browns and greens right, but that's where we're talking about all of that in here as well too. So I don't know. What do you guys think about that? Does it feel like December is probably not the most ideal place for the composting?
Probably not for me. I don't know.
But when would be a good time, right? Like
Probably like Nikes, you're right.
so
I
it's
don't
kind of
know.
something that we have to think about the whole year round,
Yeah.
right? And yet it feels overdone to try to bring it into each lesson. So it kind of just got slotted here in December since there's not a lot going on. I just used it as the month to talk about it. But that's the exact types of questions that I've been having myself, right? Like,
Well, at least it's, winter time, so maybe when it rains and stuff like that, your big pile will be so moisture, inside when you start turning it a little bit more, as the months go and you start putting it on your property or whatever, it might be not as dry and
well, when you're composting, and that's part of what this lesson talks about, you don't want to let it get dry. I mean, you can. It'll take it a lot longer to decompose. Okay.
Are you planning to do like rocks like around like where your mulch is so it doesn't get all messy? Because that's where I've been watching a lot of videos where that was a problem with people with mulching is that the mulches like start going on their sidewalks and they try to try to keep it contained. So yeah, that's one of the issues I was thinking about in my
On
brain.
our pad, right? Our back patio is just a flat concrete pad that's probably, I don't know, maybe even 15, 16 feet long by about 8 feet wide away from the house. And we put rocks around that edge, just like you asked. That's exactly what we did. And as they settled, they didn't even try to come up because we left pathways where you could enter in on both sides. It wasn't too bad. But when we didn't have any barrier there, it was too much, right? They were coming up onto the patio more than I wanted them to. And that's one of the things that Nicole Burt talks about a lot is edging. And so with what we did over this whole area, this is all more rewilded. So we're discussing whether it's going to be needed to have edging between this rewilded upper hill because naturally on this property, the way we got it, there's already a slight hill right here. And we've exaggerated that with the swale and berm. So does that need a formal edging between the, so let me see if I can show you guys a little bit better about what we're going to do. I think I talked to you about like the potager and stuff. And this gives you an idea because there's so many different areas that we're going to incorporate into it that I feel like it's a good example sort of a situation to show you all the different things within it, which is part of the reason why we are doing so many of the different things that we're doing here, is we want people to be able to have an idea so that they can make their best decisions for their spaces, right? So we're going to do a little bit of a lot of different things. We have enough property to showcase multiple ways that someone could have their situation. I think we have enough space to do something like one of these in the back corner on the left side when you're facing out in it, the left side of the yard where the Wally Peony was going to be. And so around it, because she started thinking of this as she's worked more and more, had more clients that are furthering her message, right? So she has clients that she does the gardens for. Now she has clients that she teaches her method to, such as myself and her students. And she's determined that if you have enough space and you want to do a native pollinator, what we call a rewilded area, if you have the room, putting it around your formalized garden area, because that's an additional barrier for those insects, right? You're going to put all those wonderful native and pollinator friendly plants in there. And that's what starts bringing all those good bugs in, and those good bugs fight the bad bugs. And also you're drawing in the things that you want more. And it also distracts the plant or the insects. They have to make it through that before they get into your garden, right? There's all these different things. And so what we're going to do, and I kind of like this one better a little bit. So I'm just not sure what I'm going to do shape-wise, right? I like the L, but it feels kind of bulky on the page, and this one seems a little cleaner. So this also seems a lot more manageable, but then we want a large garden. So all these questions that I just don't know what I'm going to do. But then outside of it, there'll be this area that goes all the way to our back fence down here. Let's see, like down here and then out like this. Our backyard is not squared. The back fence yard is pretty much squared to the house, but both of the side fences are just doing their own thing, off shooting into diagonal angles from the backyard fence. And so you have to find a straight place that you're going to work from. So we're going to work from as if this were our back fence back here, right? So a little bit higher so you can see back here. And then outside of a 3-foot walkway here, instead of like grass and stuff, there will be a rewilded area that fits all the way around it outside of the wood chipped area that will, yes, have an edging, but not like these. These are expensive types of edging, right? The bricks, the flagstones. We're going to do edging like this. And so these are all the different kinds of things. You can't see it as well here, but you get an idea. See how it's just like a little plastic tiny wall there? Can you see that, guys? Right? There's just this little bitty plastic runner that goes along the edges. And we're going to do edging more towards that effect than that nice, pretty walkway style. What we're actually going to do is take these wood chips, right? Trying to do it for as low cost as we can all the way around. And we're going to take those wood chips and these huge logs. It's hard to see really how big they are. And we're going to chop them into slices. We're not chopping. We're going to saw them into slices. That'll probably be anywhere from 1 inch to 2 inches, right? We're not chainsaw geniuses. And we want to use those instead of bricks or flagstones or gravel for the walkway pieces on top of the wood chips themselves. So even though I'm only doing half the garden with the raised beds with wood chips and half without, right? We're testing it out to see what we like better, gardenary or mulching with wood chips as well as that living mulch. the ground where those beds are, I'm not going to put gravel. I do not like gravel. I'm going to put wood chips, with the exception of the fact that she said your beds will be able to be, your raised beds will be able to be more precisely aligned. Oh my goodness. Level. There we go. They're going to be able to be more level if you put gravel under the actual bed itself. So the first layer is going to be the garden paper sheeting that we've read about in our book, right? I think, did we talk? Nope, that's in the other book. So that's one that we will read. And I'm thinking that after we get through leaves, we're going to shift over to this other book. And the other book, it talks about building the raised beds and things of that nature. And so she talks about how you roll out this paper. I don't like no-grow. I can't stand no-grow, so I prefer that paper to no-grow. Then you put down your gravel, your wood chips, whatever medium that you've chosen as your cover for your gardening area. And if you're not using gravel for the whole area, because as you see here in every picture I've shown you, I think she's chosen gravel. She does have a few that are wood chips, and I'm sure that those clients insisted upon it. Right? She doesn't prefer that anymore. So I understand where people are coming from with that, but I don't like the way gravel feels under my feet. So here are two. Let me stop share again. I believe this is gravel and this is wood chips here, right? And I think that looks so much better. I like that it's giving back to the soil, that's supporting the ground. And I also don't believe that we should be controlling the insect population to quite the levels that we try to do. So when she doesn't want them to have any place to hide in your plants, I'm not being mean to her. I think she's really neat, and I can't talk to her face to face to tell her these things, but I think that's kind of short-sighted and a little bit mean, and kind of that direction that everybody goes to where they don't really like to think about the fact that the only reason that this globe works is because all of the denizens of this planet have their own role to play. And when we try to kick out every single bad bug and completely control it like that, it's really not totally natural. There is almost in any natural ecosystem that you go to some sort of ground cover. And yes, sometimes it is a living ground cover, but even then it's like a flat living on the top of the soil cover. There's never really soil exposed. And no, the soil isn't exposed once the plants fully come in with her method or start to fully come in. They don't have to be fully grown and ready to be chopped down before, but once they've really started to come in, you're not going to see that soil. But until they are that fully established, you are going to just see that bare soil. And that is something that you just don't see in nature, or nature's trying to fix it. Say that there was a landslide, right? Or a rock that had been holding up a good portion of a dirt hill finally gave, and more of that hill came down with it. That's exposed soil. Nature steps in, and right away, they're trying to fill that soil with living plants. Those living plants, as they go through cycles, there's not gardeners out there to whack down the leaves from the lilies or the whatever type of plant. It just continues to break down inside of itself. There's a detritus that's a natural part of any ecosystem. And so it really goes against my strong belief in this type of a system. She's mostly in accordance. We talk about how much I love a lot of her thoughts, but that doesn't really fit. Now, if she had some sort of living ground cover that went over it, it could, but that doesn't really work, because the only time that you really see like mosses or those type of really low growing plants that are out there, they're a native plant and they're just established and they're just there year after year. And in those areas, you won't see a lot of the other plants if it's just that low growing cover, right? Just like think about any natural areas that you've been in, pictures that you've looked at no point in the season in a natural area, unless it's been damaged by vehicles, do you really see bare soil. And so this is something that we'll go back and forth about and see. I'm not going to tell her that she's wrong in her level of success until I've tried it out for myself. If the plants that are mulched have relatively comparable success rates to the plants that aren't mulched, it's probably going to be pretty hard for me to leave that bare soil. I just don't like the look of it because to me it has never looked natural since I was too young to remember. By the time I had conscious thought, I thought bare soil looked wrong because it's not out in nature. Even in damaged soil, unless it's just constantly degraded and people are constantly driving their ATVs and things over it. Once that soil is damaged, nature jumps in immediately and tries to fill that gap, right? So it's just a little bit more than cover that will come after a couple of 3 weeks or so. And yes, there's a raised hand, but then I can't see it. It's kind of weird. If somebody has a question, please shout it out. Okay, I don't know. That's really weird. I've never seen it quite like this before on my screen in our participants. It shows a raised hand and it says 1, but then none of us have our hand raised. So very interesting. It's been a weird day electronically, and I think either I'm glitching out or some things online are glitching out a little bit. Funny stuff.
That's
All right.
AI for you. They paying attention.
Maybe they don't want us to talk about natural processes, right? I don't know. It's been kind of a weird day technologically. I could not get Matthew to see earlier when we were all trying to come in and have a meeting with him. I could not get him to see what I needed him to see. And he's been there and he's done it before. So I think his computer wasn't like catching up very quickly and he couldn't get it. It didn't matter that he was refreshing. It wasn't showing up. And so I don't know, just some weird things electronically today.
Well, yesterday, he kept glitching out in the live yesterday that he did, and then he just completely went blank. And
no.
it could be his computer need to be updated or something like that, because he was in the middle of a live yesterday, and then after like 20 minutes, it just went black.
Yeah, I would imagine his devices probably need to be cleaned. I don't think he has like regularly scheduled anything in his world except these staff meetings and his lives on Tuesday, right? Like he just decides what he's going to do any given moment of the day, right? He's just always active doing something. But yeah, I don't think he does regular maintenance on his device. That would be my guess, his devices. He probably just buys a new one when they start being overloaded by, because he does the same thing as that I do, right? Like if you look at his Windows, there's always 100 tabs open, and that's hard on your devices, right? So we use the heck out of our devices, but I clean mine up pretty regularly. It starts slowing down, I go clean it up, right? So, all right, guys. So what do you think as we're working through all of this? Let's, the composting, it doesn't seem to just like naturally fit anywhere. So maybe we should just have a separate little section down at the bottom that has like year-round activities, something like that. So for like composting and I don't know, it's another just year-round activity that kind of always has to take place. Is that really the only one like that?
Watering.
Watering, but even then, right? Because you have to stop watering in the colder areas. I haven't watered since October, or maybe early October, late September. We got so much water and then it started going colder that you just didn't need to water anymore. Do you really have to water very often outside of like your actual garden? I don't know. Ethel in Louisiana, she doesn't water her yard. It's just green.
No, not really.
So yeah, I can't think of any others. We'll come across them, I betcha. I'm going to add something to that, but.
Oh, indoor plants.
Yeah, you do have to take care of your indoor plants just year round, right? So indoor plants and composting at least. And just have another little section down there at the bottom that fits into. And then figure out what to put in December.
Or just leave those in December, indoor planting and and composting, compost planning.
Maybe. I don't know. It never really fit quite right? Because in a normal year, I should not be able to do anything other than add some compost to the top of the frozen heap that's in my backyard. This year, I could go turn it. I haven't had a time yet where I couldn't turn it because it's just been thawed this entire time. So this is normally a time I can't do anything but add to it, and that's not ideal. And so when we're not certainly the coldest location in the state, there's more. Just, I don't know. These are the things I sit over here and worry about in my brain. So, do you guys want to talk about anything that you have going on? Have you started your sprouts, Kinda?
Yeah, but they haven't sprouted.
No, not quite yet.
Yeah, I mean, I started it, but they haven't sprouted. I started on Monday, and I've still been rotating them. I don't know if
For a
those
whole week?
Mm-hmm.
That's weird.
I know, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'll say I'd give it another week, and then if not, then I'll put it in some dirt and just see what happens.
Well, the seeds might not be viable. They might have gotten too hot or too cold. Did they look like they were intact, right? Like the seed papers were all still pretty well on them and they looked good?
Mm-hmm. For the most part.
Where do you keep them? Do you keep them in a temperature controlled location?
No, I just kind of keep them in the the seeds that I'm using, I keep them by the windowsill. That's
Yeah,
also
when you
by
weren't doing it for like all this time, right? Where did you have them?
They were in a glass cabinet in the middle of the kitchen.
Yeah, that's temperature controlled for sure.
Oh.
So they shouldn't have been so hot that they went dormant or that they died, or so cold that in fact cold doesn't work like that. It's more heat. If they get too hot, you can sterilize seeds. You can sterilize soil, right? Like that's what when they put down that clear or the black plastic cover over a huge swath of soil, that's because it's just so overtaken by weeds that they want to kill everything that they can down to as hot as they can get the ground to go. And that sterilizes all those weed seeds that are already there. They're having trouble getting them out. It kills everything good as well, but it does sterilize the weed seeds too. It kills the roots down to a certain level even, right? All these things. And so heat can be really bad. Cold, they have a seed vault, from my understanding, in Antarctica for the fact that it does freeze them, right? That's like as cold as you can get it. So that's what I've been told. They have some sort of international seed vault where multiple countries contribute to this storage system for seeds.
That's interesting.
Yeah, it's on YouTube. I saw a video what she's talking about. Yeah, it's pretty cool.
They're doing that like a little bit like a museum, a little bit as a precaution, all these different things, right? Because we're going in the ways of like GMOs and everything. Well, what if something happens, right? I don't know if you guys ever have watched a show called Blacklist, but they talk about a genetically modified plant that is corn is 90% GMO now, that or more, because that's an old statistic. So it could be even higher than that now. In our country, and I think to some degree worldwide, it is 90% GMO. If something out there becomes strong enough, like a bug or some sort of disease for a plant, and it spreads quickly, it could take out 90% of the world's corn crop. And so saving those seeds, if something catastrophic like that happened, saving those seeds could restart things, right? Beyond just GMOs, but that's just one scenario where you might want to be able to reboot the plant life. Kind of crazy things we talk about.
Patented seeds.
Say that again.
Say reboot the patented seeds.
Not the patented ones. That would be the problem of my scenario where the problem, right? Um, it's actually a big discussion. I read a partially written novel about an underground seed railroad, that like a futuristic novel after GMOs had been established so much that the only vegetables and fruits you were allowed to grow were the ones that were offered in that fashion. And so people had an underground illegal seed railroad to keep non-GMO and heirloom and things of that nature seeds alive.
Right.
Kind of a scary thought, right?
Mm-hmm.
As you control the food, that's more important than controlling the money, right? That's one of those things that they kind of people say. And so that's one of the things behind collectively rewilding. No matter where you're at in the political world, having control of your own food is just money in the bank almost. It's control over your own future, to know how to sustain yourself through foraging, hunting, and growing your own food, right? All of these, raising animals, whatever levels people choose to understand and have a skill set. Up until the last 100 years or so ago, if you didn't have those, you weren't going to survive. And a calamity could happen at any time. It's always good to be able to provide yourself with your own food. Look at how long, I think it was in Pennsylvania, there were like 3 years that Sandy Hook didn't have their facilities back up and running. I want to say something like that. There were areas over there after some of the major hurricanes. If you have the ability to take care of some of your own things yourself, yeah, it'll take you a minute to reestablish too. You're talking about a hurricane. But if you have your basement and things like that, and you're not one of the unfortunate ones that their entire structure was ripped out, then you can start growing your own food right then. And a lot of the places that have these hurricanes and tornadoes are warmer areas where you could start growing at almost any time of the year. So that's a blessing in that one area of the tornado, hurricane prone areas, that luckily they are generally an area that you could pretty much grow something if you needed to eat at any point of the year.
Right.
Well, guys, I thought we had a lot more to talk about, but I forgot we're not in January yet. I have January's all ready and raring to go, and December is there, but I'm not happy with the compost being that whole lesson. It's just, I mean, that makes December really dirty.
We'll put it in the middle. Because you take all year to gather things, and it's different things that you can use to compost. So, like in the fall time, you use the leaves a lot of the times. A lot of the dead branches and stuff. Depending on how your eggs and stuff do, if you have chickens, then you can use that in the summertime, springtime. So it's a I guess put it in the middle.
Something. I feel like there's something. It's not quite right. And your idea of the middle isn't bad, because then they see it, or perhaps maybe even at the top, and just have those basics, weeding, watering, composting, the things that you might have to do at almost any point of the year. Maybe just an intro unit that covers those things that don't fit in any one spot, because they kind of fit throughout all of the spots, right?
That's correct.
I'll have to think about it and get something up, because I definitely don't like December as it is. December is supposed to be, yes, a cold month, but a month for not a lot of dirty, decomposting drudgery, right? That's not what we're really looking for in December. So, something else has got to take that place, something more positive. And,
Okay.
I thought about spreading it throughout the whole time. And again, it doesn't work. So something, a separate little area. And you're right. I don't think the bottom is probably the best, because if it has to happen all year, why would you put it at the bottom? Nobody sees it. And then they could have used it all year.
That's right. And it's mostly now of the items to compost, or to keep your I guess like keep animals away from it. Because you have some animals that may want to feed off of your compost before your plants and things get to rejuvenate out of it. You have
I expected that with these cats, right? I really thought that they would get in and bother at like the eggshells. They haven't. The birds haven't. I've been really surprised, but we do keep our ratios really well, right? So the smells they're not negative smells, which are sometimes positive to animals, right? They're like a draw for animals, but it helps to speed that decomposition process along. That stuff might pretty readily become further along in the decomposition than the animals really want to bother with, because we have a troop of stray cats in this area. And
okay.
We're one of the cities of trees, right? Where you have to have, I think it's 10,000 trees in a city, and you get that designation. This entire neighborhood is filled with trees and birds. So with the birds and the cats leaving it alone, I don't even see a lot of activity from the insects on it. But the plants come up because we haven't been turning it as well as we should have since we cut down all the trees. We just got consumed by other things that had to happen. It hasn't gotten turned much. And so the plants have just come up, and they're turning it into a hill, right? So we're going to have to break it open and get at that soil inside, because we do want to put those in as little bitty raised bed garden beds back there. That's what they were initially intended for. And they're perfect little, 4.5 by 4.5 squares. They're really nice for a couple of little distinct, like the salsa garden or the stir fry garden that we talked about yesterday, right?
Okay.
But yeah, the cats,
But
the
now you
birds,
got
and the bugs
disturb
aren't bothering it.
It got to be some real stinky stuff if they not bothered.
No, they like the stink, right? So the smells have been contained. They're not drawing them in. I can go sit by it, and I go out there and smoke my puffy airs or my cigarettes, because I don't like the little cat going out front. I mean, we got it worked out. He does now, but during the end of the fall, I would go sit out, and the best sunny spot was right next to that compost heap. And I could get right up within 6 feet or 6 inches, a foot away, and I didn't smell it. And that's what you really want your compost heap to be like. You don't want it to have a tremendous amount of smells. If you're getting a lot of smells off of it, then your brown to green ratio is not right. And you're going to attract more pests. You're going to attract more scavengers. But my own animals, they go up, they sniff at any new stuff, and then they just move on. My own dogs don't bother at it. I told them no several times, and they left it alone. If it was really encouraging and enticing, you wouldn't be able to keep them away from it when you're not out there watching them. You know what I mean? So that's the kind of thing that I'm sorry, go ahead, Candace.
No, that makes sense now that you said it. Yeah, because it just depends on what kind of animal it is. See, like
I imagine a raccoon or a skunk might be more prevalent to get into it, but really, if you've got your brown to green ratios right, it shouldn't attract them. So maybe a little bit, but not really. Just those bugs that are supposed to be in there working on it, right? And I didn't see this preponderance of flies even. That's not really what you want to see. If you see a bunch of flies, then that means it's stinky, because flies are drawn to that, and you don't want that. You want it to smell like essentially nothing, like you're just outside near any other patch of grass or garden. It doesn't have a smell of decomposition.
Like you don't want it to smell like fresh mulch being put down.
Well, once it gets to a certain point of decomposition, it's going to have that rich soil smell. Is that what you're meaning?
Well, I know down here, we know when somebody just got landscaping done because you can smell mulch like for weeks.
The wood smell.
And
Is that right? Or is it something else?
well, they have been turning tires and shredding up tires and mixing it with mulch. So yeah, it has a different kind of smell and it lingers and for a long time. So yeah. So like the kids at the playgrounds, they're not playing in real dirt and stuff. They're playing in tires pretty much.
A lot of them. Yeah, it's very true. A lot of playgrounds are moving towards things like that. It is.
And that's biodegrading to these kids, like that's crazy. I don't think that's safe for them to be, playing in or
Well, kids are putting it in their mouth.
I
Right.
was just gonna say ingesting it, like that's remedial to me,
But
because
that's a problem when you have wood chips or sand as well, though, because the cats love and they go and they leave their excrement all over. So unless
mm,
you do something that's like one of those kind of like bouncy surfaces, and then that's still a rubber type of a surface as it breaks down, they're gonna throw chunks at each other. Like I don't know. Unless it's actual grass or something like that, it's really hard. And then of course the grass gets trampled on. In a lot of areas you can't maintain grass in that area, you know? So
well, I sure appreciate it. Thank
of course. I would definitely oh, I don't know. Um that's where having a community garden, if you work towards having a community garden, Candace, that's an arena for you to talk to people about that rubber mulch stuff when they're choosing, right? And then you get enough traction, and then you as a group can talk to the city about the fact that you don't like that where your kids are, that you want to find the best possible solution. Maybe there's nothing that's 100% perfect, but that probably isn't the most optimal, right?
you. Well, I have noticed that down here, kids don't even have a park to go to, because like if it's not a shootout or them finding needles and all kind of stuff, like they just close it down. So and kids don't even do recess here. They don't have PE. They don't attend recess. So they don't even get sunlight. Besides walking to school or walking home, that's it.
That sounds like a whole big bunch of things that we could work on. Like whenever you can, just come on Wednesdays and we'll take at least 10 minutes of the class each week to start. There's all kinds of things that you can do. You have to be aware there can be pushback if there's things like gangs that can get a little scary, and that should be a part of the discussion, but you can start really simple and small without having to approach that level. Sometimes they don't even like community gardens though, right? So that's where we would want to be maybe making some contacts with the police and the sheriff to determine how strong of a presence is that in these neighborhoods. Is it going to be safe for us to look at trying to create an outdoor space where we can garden? How do we go about moving towards that, right? So if it's not just getting that space, if it's keeping that space safe, and there are models all over the country where people have done things like this. That's how I know you can get that pushback, right? And so approaching those places that have also done this and help their areas to move into a more positive, less aggressive area. So does that sound like something that you would be interested in starting to pursue, right? Like it's a long-term goal, right? It's not a next month or a next year goal, right? It's something to work at slowly over time, just consistently plucking away at all of the negatives that you are wanting to change in your own physical environment, your own community, right?
Yeah. That only thing is I'm just looking at it. I will have to stay in this city to make sure that it goes through
No.
because it won't be long before my kids graduate. I have 2 more years. And
So
I
the
plan on
whole
getting
thing would
out of
be
this
that you
city.
would you would set up a group. You would not ever be trying to do this all yourself, right?
Okay.
And that's part of what we talk about. That's part of where we say, okay, so do you want to start going to your city meetings, or are you better off to start by talking to some of your close neighbors that you already know and have at least somewhat established a relationship? Or is your community so distant that neighbors don't talk because they're that wary of life around them, right? Like, what level are we at?
Yes, they don't talk. Now, my neighbors, because I am neighborhood watch for um my community is like older, like on my street. So like I have keys to just about every other person's house on my street because everybody is older. I'm the youngest on my street. So if they have packages or if I haven't seen a car moved or something like that, I'm going to knock on the door, I'm something. So I have access to them, you know, very much so. So we all communicate with each other, but outside of my street, no, people don't communicate because they're, I mean, you have kids that's getting shot at, while they're sleeping type of thing. So it's just, we have National Guards, we have all the alphabets, DEA, FBI, ATF, just everybody right now. Like right now, here it is, the helicopters is coming over my house. And I'm just like, you can't, nobody feels safe. So regardless of if you're trying, and we have police officers that are just as crooked as, two left shoes, but we try our best to, stay safe. And it's just
What about
easy
your
to
sheriff?
betray yourself.
Have you ever
Oh,
talked or worked with your sheriffs? They're generally a more honorable set of law enforcement.
well, I live in the county, so in the county we have sheriffs. I don't live in the city, but
The
our
people of
sheriff,
the city are still in the county, though, and they can reach out to their sheriff.
yeah.
Yeah, you
And so
can. But I hear what you're saying
that's
as
what we
well,
do.
right?
Yeah.
Mhm.
That's what we try to do. Cause see, like even when it comes to if we see an accident, if I call 911, they're gonna ask where was it? Just send some help. It doesn't well, you're in the city limits, so we gotta call those police. Okay, so if that line is busy, so do you mean to tell me you can't send nobody any help? That's just how divided we are as a city, and it doesn't make sense. Like I don't care how much you try to put us as a whole, we
No, and I
are
don't mean it
doing
quite like that. So when I'm talking about resources to start approaching problems, if they don't have jurisdiction fully because you're in a city, right? The county is the city is still included in the county, and there's definite distinctions between their prerogatives and their lines of authority and all of this. I'm not disputing any of that, but you can have them as a support network to help you come up with plans for how you could move forward with this or with that. And
okay.
they're just somebody that traditionally at this time and for quite some time, they are seen as a more community oriented law enforcement branch.
Okay.
And they
Well,
a
I
lot of
can
times take
definitely.
secondary oaths that like they uphold the Constitution and things like that. So your sheriffs are just a really good ally if there's something that you do have to the level that you have to deal with, right? Like I don't try to involve the sheriffs or the police because there's not anything going on like that here. Now, over in parts of the areas that I lived in Salt Lake Valley, that's not the same case. I didn't end up having to contact them or anything, but I've lived around, I've moved all over. I lived in some really bad areas in California. So I get it. And those are going to be your cities. And that's where, so like when we lived in Rawlins, Wyoming, that's country. Okay. But the city of Rawlins and the city of Rock Springs are known as just horrendously corrupt in their police departments. Now, this was 10 years ago. Okay. So I don't know, but they didn't talk about the sheriffs like that. They're just they look at things differently. They have a different mentality. And so it's an ally. Whether or not they're in your jurisdiction, you can still approach them and say, we're having this problem, and this street wants to be moving forward. We want to do things positively, but we need to get more people involved. Do you have any suggestions for us? Do you know any contacts that would be good for us to reach out that do have jurisdiction over this area? Do you see how you talk to someone? It's just like when we're talking about grant and grant-like opportunities and we say they said no or they said yes, we still ask if someone else that they're aware of might want to work with someone in our situation. And that's kind of how you would reach out to your sheriffs. Now, if you're in the county, traditionally that is more, like you're saying, kind of handled by the sheriff. But if you're coming from the city to the county and you see the accident, then you can't call the sheriffs, is what you're saying, right? Because that's in the city side. And you couldn't call the city if it was on the county side.
That's absolutely right.
Okay.
But what is crazy is when you're doing something wrong or minding your business, the sheriff will pull you over in the city and the city will pull you over in the county. Now, make sense. Yeah, so, I don't have faith in our police department at all, sheriff or city, but I don't mind reaching out.
No, right? That's where you're at. You're telling me where you're at. I don't get to tell you where you're at. So at that point, then perhaps you want to reach out to nonprofits that handle things like this. So like the NAACP, perhaps, or the Civil Rights League, Take Back Your Streets kind of organizations, instead of working with local law enforcement. Does that sound like a more positive path?
Yeah, now that is a more doable thing. Even it's easier, to approach them. I mean, I can even reach out to like the commissioners and things like that. I will reach out to them before I reach out to the Shelby County Sheriff or.
Well, that's really good though, because you're very aware of what you do need to do in your area, right? Like I'm hearing you, I'm going to keep throwing suggestions at you, but you know your area. And so that's one of the things that we can sit down. I don't know if you're like Megan and it's helpful to just get somebody to write down all the things that you already know and have it there as a list.
Yep, I'm like that.
Okay. So that's our starting point for yours.
Now, I can't talk as fast as Megan. I can't talk as fast as Megan, but I can definitely use the list.
Right, Megan and I, we do like that fast pace, but I got to be real with you on that time, trying to keep up with Megan while I'm trying to catch as much as I can of all the pertinent words that she's throwing at me. Okay, yeah. That's not a negative. That's a good thing, Candace. Okay, and so that's what we'll do. Every Wednesday that you're able to attend, we'll take at least a 10-minute segment. We'll probably do it like when I notice you're there, right? So that if you have to pop off or you get noisy behind you or whatever, start it off by giving you that minute. Then if you can't answer, right, there's sometimes you can't answer. We'll just move on. And then we'll throw it out again. Hey, Candace, are you available now? We'd love to still go over that with you. And when you're ready, then we'll do your 10 minutes or more. Just make sure for that 10 minutes at least each time you speak. Okay. I like that.
Thank you.
Because there's definitely things that you can do. And when you said that you have to stay there, no, you don't have to stay there. If you want to set something up, but know that you may move in the next 2 to 4 to 5 years, you build a larger management type of a group with what you're doing so that you have other key players that are also able to step up if there's one of you that moves away or one of you that starts a business and doesn't have time anymore or whatever the case may be. And that's where you can make it into a nonprofit and have a board. And those 5 people, those 7 people all have a similar amount of responsibility and commitment to your goal. And if you need to step down, there will be other interested parties that they can vote on to step up, things like that.
Okay.
Again, that takes work, right? Like that's what I'm saying. This isn't a tomorrow solution or a next month solution. This is something that we slowly work towards over time, building little pieces of the solution as we go so that you can accomplish this big picture vision you have of a neighborhood filled with healthy kids that can run around in safety and play in the sunlight.
Yes.
Yeah. So that's a big, big goal. So no matter what, you're going to want support. And that way you don't have to feel like it's all on your shoulders. You have this group of committed people that are there to back you up or take over if your commitments in your life or moving something takes place.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make you feel a little more solid in it as well?
Yes. It does. I sure it's a process. It didn't happen overnight. It's not gonna fix overnight. So it's a process, and step by step, day by day, and I'm ready.
Exactly. And we can all do that in our areas, no matter what the goal set is, right? We can all take those small steps to make those improvements in our communities that we see need improvement. If we think something needs improvement, I guarantee you there's going to be like-minded people out there. And in fact, that's why, and I don't know where the paper is right offhand, I had it just sitting out for so long. One of the things with the nonprofits, they have the Utah Nonprofit Association, and they have this little flyer, this little meme that you look at. And it says, for your idea for your nonprofit, is there already an organization doing something very similar to what you're doing? And if the answer is yes, they say, well, go and work with them and see if you can work with them instead of just starting a new nonprofit. Because just like you could have too many McDonald's in a city, right? You can have too many nonprofits doing the same thing. So if you find there's another committee, another nonprofit out there doing basically what you want, your first thing is to go and see if that's close enough that you guys can mesh your goals and you can further what they're doing and they can include some of what you're thinking and see if you guys can work together. If there's not anyone out there doing it, then yes, start one. If there's one that's doing something similar, but it's really not what you're doing, then that's where you have to kind of make a decision, right? And so that's one of the first things as well, to see if there is already an entity in your area that has similar goal sets to you. And are they doing something about it? Are they actually working towards that? Are they seeing some success or having some successful projects and things, right?
Right.
That would take a lot of pressure off your shoulders as well. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yep, make plenty of sense.
Excellent. All right, guys. Well, let's go ahead and jump into the calendar. Kind of took a little bit of an interesting offshoot there, but these are things that we deal with. And when we're not feeling secure in our environment, it's really hard to do anything with your outdoor environment, right? If we don't feel safe, how are you going to go comfortably stand out in the middle of your yard and garden? That's steps that we'll want to take so that you approach where you want to be. And that's where maybe right now for you, a backyard porch garden or windowsill garden might be a better endeavor for you, and also not as big of an endeavor, right? So that you can spend your time working with people in your neighborhood to see about moving forward in small steps. The nonprofits in your area, see what they're doing, contacting the different areas that are in inner cities. I'm guessing that that's where you're tending towards, at least. Is that right, Candace?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. And start, Compton, the Bronx, Detroit. They have started these gardening programs in very, very dangerous locations, right? And so we approach those entities and say, we would really love to follow your path in our area. And we would love some advice, suggestions, if there's YouTube videos that you have out there helping us to safely follow your path as much as can be. Nothing is a guarantee of safety in a situation like that, right? But obviously they did it. They've established it and they've continued forward. So there are things that we can do to minimize the risk when we're doing things like that, right?
Correct.
And so that's our safest sure bet to start with, is looking at what others have done in similar situations and reaching out to those people, like you said, the commissioner, and start talking to people like that. perhaps going to church meetings and talking to people, things of that nature. You don't want to reach out to the authority because they're just that. They're not real, right? There's something that you can't trust. So your neighbors, your churches, your nonprofits, your advocacy centers, and these other, essentially like what I talk about with Megan, where we're going to put together a template for what she's done in her area to get all these spay and neuter clinics, all of these donations that she gets to take care of these cats where there's not a pound for anybody. And Megan basically has become the Boron County pound. We're going to put all that she's doing together as a template so that somebody in your location or my location or Alaska or Puerto Rico could look at that template and start basing their journey off of what has succeeded in another area. And so that's where we reach out to. Those are 3 inner cities that I know of specifically that have garden programs like what you want to do, right? Compton, the Bronx, and Detroit. Okay. And I'm sure there are others.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I lived in an area of California, and it's just completely evading. I can picture the freeway, 99 freeway, Gardena. We lived in Gardena, California. That's neighboring Compton, and it's tending more towards like Asian gang violence, but it's still, you know, completely inner city. And one of my friends' dads got shot in his house. Like what you're saying, he had no part in anything that took place. He was inside the building and he was shot and killed. And so Compton is at that kind of a level, and they have created these gardens there. So I know that we can do it, anything that we put our minds to. And we already have a path to help us map our journey wherever we are because someone else has done it now, right?
Right.
So yeah, I feel that reality. I've lived in poverty in the country, and I've lived in poverty in the city. So yes, it's something that you have to be aware of. And in the inner cities, it's very hard to get any kind of fresh food. And so having a community garden there is better than anywhere else that it could be. So let's find those templates. Let's find a way to safely get some changes going on in your environment that aren't solely responsible on your shoulders.
Sound good.
All right. And so tomorrow's Let's Quit Together, not quite how-tos. Hopefully you'll make it back on December 17th for how-tos for community outreach, Miss Candace. But for tomorrow, we will be back again together at 2:30 p.m. Pacific, 3:30 p.m. Mountain, 4:30 p.m. Central, and 5:30 p.m. Eastern for Let's Quit Together. And really, I feel like all of these things support each other. I feel like if we have a community garden, we're probably going to stop doing quite so many negative patterns if we're spending all of our time in our community garden, right? So each activity supports every other activity that we are really trying to accomplish. If we try to spend more time in the garden, we're probably not going to smoke as many cigarettes or drink as many sodas, right? It's all a thing that's why I didn't think it was out of place for us to quit together, because we're trying to replace it with all these positive, happy habits that are healthier for us, right? And so I really feel like let's quit the violence together still kind of fits, right? Like that's something that your community, I know you're not alone in your community that wants that to stop. And so how do we get your community to quit the violence together? And thank God, quite literally, thank God, there are these templates out there, because I don't know. I've been around violence off and on my entire life, somewhat at that, some of it at that level. Like I said, we were in, it's different, right? Like Asian gangs are real quiet compared to the brashness of gangs that might go blood Crip style, right? It's just 2 totally different presentations, but it's not fun. And I wouldn't know how to go about fixing it. That's not my area of expertise. So thank goodness there are these literally coast to coast, right? From Compton to the Bronx, and then that really cold area of Detroit. We have this nice map that they've really built, because I mean, if you asked all of us, right? There's what, 6 of us, 7 of us here. Does anybody have like a solution for how do you go from worrying that you're going to get a shot through your wall to having a community garden, right? Like that seems so daunting. But thank goodness it isn't that bad for us because someone has done it before. And they, of course, have that. If they've done something like that for their community, of course, they want to see all the inner cities across our nation and the globe make steps towards that positivity as well, right? So they're going to be very supportive and encouraging almost always for things that like what you're wanting to do. It's a scary thing. I don't know. The real answer is education. Education is the key, but we don't have powers that be that dedicate the kinds of resources that would be needed to shift mindset and provide enough support for people that's mindset is already shifted just fine. They just don't get to experience what they know they should be experiencing, like yourself, right? And so it's education. But when you can't trust the authority, when you can't trust the politician to delegate the resources as they should, that's where we have to do it for ourselves, right? That's why we're collectively rewilding. We're rewilding as individuals, we're rewilding as families, we're rewilding as communities. And yes, we're rewilding our health because the tribes people that we all come from, they didn't have these excesses of addictions the way that we do today, right? Because they were closer to nature and they had chemicals. The shamans took different types of hallucinogenic medicine. They had stimulants, they had alcohol, right? But they didn't have these levels of addiction. And I believe that that's because they had community and nature. We don't have that anymore. And so we have to build our own tribes. So, and am I getting close? I'm going to start cutting into your class, aren't I, Tammy? I apologize.
Yeah.
So let's shut it down. But it's something I feel so passionately about. And I don't want you to feel hopeless, Candace. I want you to know that we're going to, together as a group, support you to help find a better solution for your tomorrow.
Well, I sure appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Of course, my dear. And for your children and for the other people's children. And even if you're not a part of that community, right?
Yeah. I mean, these kids are our futures of tomorrow. So
They are.
they're going to always be my babies, regardless if I birth them or not.
Agreed. And, you know, I think that that is something I wish I could talk to these decision makers, because I just want to ask them, when you just decide a segment of our population isn't worth allotting resources to, do you not realize that one of those children may have the solution to Alzheimer's, may have the solution to the damage that we've done to our oceans with the plastic pollution, may have the solution for us going to space if we destroy our planet to the point that it can't support human life anymore. You're just deciding that they don't need education or they don't need the resources that will allow their brain to become its fullest. And what government wouldn't want their populace to be the strongest, smartest, healthiest, most loyal? Agreed, I get that, right? But are you not going to be more loyal to a place that provides you with a better future than a lesser future? It just seems so counterintuitive the way these policymakers act, right? So that's why we're going to do it together. And that's why I'm going to quit talking, because I can get on my soapbox. So I'm sorry, Miss Tammy, I will shut it down. All right, guys, I better just say goodnight. Everybody, please feel free to open up your mics and shut me up and say goodnight.
Good night, Sabrina. I'll see you next class. All right.
Good night.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Enjoy your night.